Your host, Mark Marquette. We're so glad you joined us today with one of our favorite guests and people, and one of your favorite guests out here, Nick Thomas. Welcome.
Well, thank you very
Welcome,
much.
Thomas Thomas. How
Good to
you
be
doing,
here. Real
sir?
fine. Thank you.
Great. Nice to have Nick here. I'm going to give a little more formal introduction to Nick because we've got a lot of new viewers out there, Nick, that
That's
have come
good.
on. I tallied up just in one folder the number of shows I've put in there. You've been about 15 shows in that one folder. So
Hmm.
Nick's been doing this for a couple years. If you don't know, he's the chief communicator for Delaware North at Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex, where for more than 38 years he's brought education, enlightenment, and his love for space to millions of daily guests at the Visitors Complex. Nick is also a Snoopy Award winner, the very coveted award given for excellent employees within the NASA contractors and the whole ranks. You're also a 2017 Harry Colcom News and Communications Award winner that was bestowed on you by the National Space Club of Florida. All great things that just say this man knows what he's talking about. And that's why today we're just going to have kind of a question and answer session that we love doing with some of our guests. Every day, Nick supervises the public talks and autograph sessions of the astronaut of the day out there, and which I tell those astronauts all the time, they have an important role, Nick, that might be the only astronaut someone from Findlay, Ohio, like
Yeah,
me, will ever meet.
that's right.
And you're impressed with that.
Oh
So,
yeah, absolutely. They make that impression. They're very cognizant of the importance of their role in that regard, and also the role they play in the inspiration of future generations. We had I think about 3 weeks, maybe about a month ago, we had a young girl chat with, and she was asking questions. And as many young people do, she was asking from a notebook with the questions. But not only asking the questions, she was writing down the answers the astronaut spoke. So I took the step of handing her notebook to the astronaut on stage and say, "Could you please autograph this for?" Because when you find someone like that,
oh, that's very
you
nice.
want to maintain that momentum. And as I told her later on, I get to be inspired by a lot of astronauts, but I also get to be inspired by young people like her. So it's very crucial, and everyone, I think, is very cognizant of the importance of reaching out to that next generation and keeping the flame alive.
Yeah, they are. It's I just applaud Delaware North for continuing to do that whole program. There's
Hmm.
also uh, it's with your $75 admission. At least it still is $75, right, a day. You locals, I think it's 125, 150 for the annual pass. Uh, what, Marty?
140.
140. There, I get Marty talking on the UCX family microphone there, my co-producer for over 5 years and 1,400 episodes of this he's put up with me,
Outstanding.
Nick.
Yeah.
You just have to do it a couple months,
Yeah.
once or twice.
I get a breather now and again, don't
Yeah,
I?
you
Don't
do.
I, Marty?
Yeah, thanks, guys, up there. Dean Babcock says hi. And Tom Celentano. I'll bet, Tommy, you got a good question for Nick. I know you've met Nick and seen him out there. He's up in Connecticut. And we've got Tom UCX says
Yeah,
good
Tommy?
afternoon. And Mitch Rothman is up in Colorado. He's going to come into town in a week or so, he said.
Mm-hmm.
Wants to come by the museum. I owe you a phone call, my friend. You'll get that tonight. And Steve Jokum says, good afternoon, Mark, Marty, Nick, and all my Stay Curious friends from Lake County Spaceport in Fox Lake, Illinois. And I'm going to hold up. There is a beautiful SSME, or called RS-25 now, that 3D printed that Steve Jokums has sent Marty as
Wow.
kind of a
That's very fitting.
a gift on there. Look at
Yeah,
how well
it's
this is
well mounted,
designed.
nicely done.
Beautiful, beautiful. Look inside there to the burners in there. Okay, and he's even got a little astronaut there
A little scale.
beside it to show you the scale of it there, Marty. That is very nice, Steve. We just got this in the mail today.
Well done.
Thank you so much. It's well done, very well done. And Steve Jokums, who you met, is
Mhm.
just an amazing, wonderful guy. He's very involved, passionate about anything he does. I know he's into sports cars and other things, but I'm so glad that he's passionate about our museum
That's
because
very
he's
good.
become a real wonderful financial contributor. His Lake County Spaceport provides decals and other modeling supplies to the
Oh,
modeler,
yeah.
and he gives a percentage of his side hustle, the profits, a year to the museum. So
Very good.
thank you, Steve Jokums. All right.
Thank you, Steve.
See you in Vegas today, or see you in Vegas over the weekend. I hope our seats are together. I'm joking because Formula One's in Vegas, and he's a
Okay.
Formula One nut like me. It costs about $1,200 a weekend probably for two cheap seats, but
Okay.
I ain't gonna put up with Vegas right now, which I understand is not doing too good in this economy. But anyway, get your questions ready for Nick here. We're happy to have him here, and truly one of America's true space historians. In his 4 decades out there at the Space Center, he's dined with a lot of the original Mercury astronauts and Apollo astronauts, and the stories he can tell are wonderful. And when we're having an adult beverage, those stories are even better. But we can't say and there. Just a privilege of sometimes being who we are and involved in this very interesting space business there. So we got a potpourri of things. We're going to talk about Gemini, is Gemini 12, last missions this week. We've got Apollo 12, just went in orbit around the moon today, 56 years ago in 1969 with the November 19th landing. And then Skylab 3/4, if you were an engineer, you call it 4, but Skylab 3, the last, was launched yesterday in 1973. And maybe some good astronauts. I remember, we'll talk about that when we get to it there, because one of the astronauts who passed away was fun to meet out there on one of his last appearances. And then we're going to end it with Nick's opinion about Artemis. Where does it stand? Artemis, what's the facts that he's hearing about Artemis 2 rollout and launch? So let's just wind it up and show, get a happy birthday up there with this guy. Well, not you. That's Wendy Lawrence and you out there at Artemis. I got that out of whack there.
Right.
And you like that picture of you? You got one similar that you
We've
got to send me.
we had a lot of fun that morning. The story behind that was that several years ago, Wendy's father was honored by having a ship, a destroyer named after him. And she very graciously invited me to the commissioning. Now, if you've never been to a U.S. Naval ship commissioning, I will tell you, no one does tradition like the United States Navy.
Oh, wow.
So I attended this ceremony. It was just absolutely overcome with the grandeur of it.
Oh, my
So
gosh.
when SLS rolled out to the launch pad, Wendy was on the docket as the assigned astronaut at that time. So we arranged to get the van and the placard and the associated regalia together so we could get out to the launch pad that morning. We got out there about 0800, about 8 in the morning, and spent some time just basking in the presence of this vehicle. And it was just a wonderful time. It was one of those things that, words didn't do it justice. I think we spent probably 75% of our time just looking at the darn thing because it was just so majestic, and thinking about all the things that it represented and all the work that it represented. So that was a good day.
I know Wendy took a little break here from the astronaut encounter group, but we miss her. She's always a fun, wonderful talk, and
great raconteur. She tells some great stories.
Yeah, she is.
And she engages so well, especially with the young people.
Yeah, I would really like to hope we can take her to dinner the next time she comes. But I want them to see our museum. And Nick, I also am starting to ask astronauts as I've gotten a little more comfortable with what I do, for something that they could give us that they flew in space in their museum.
Sure.
I'd like to have an exhibit of astronaut things flown in space for people to look at there. So
flown articles.
But no, her dad, Robert Lawrence, I believe his name was
Bill Lawrence.
Bill. Okay, William. He Robert Lawrence was the astronaut.
Bill Lawrence was a Navy aviator, fighter pilot, test pilot. He was in line to, he did apply for the Mercury program as an astronaut, but was disqualified because of a medical. He went on to fly as a fighter pilot in Vietnam, was shot down, and spent years in the Hanoi Hilton.
Yeah.
Came back home and went on to serve as the head of the United States Naval Academy. And while his daughter
Oh,
was
she was
going
a
there,
plebe there, right?
so don't think
Yeah,
there wasn't
a
a
little
little
bit
bit
of
of pressure
pressure.
there. Yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
But remarkable man. If you're able to find his autobiography, it's called Tennessee Patriot. I highly recommend it. Tennessee Patriot by Admiral William Lawrence.
all right.
Yeah,
But check that out.
yeah.
He is one of the true
True
American
heroes.
heroes. Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Talk about hidden figures in our military. He
Hmm.
was one for sure. Right out of the chute, we got Jim McDade. Always happy to see Jim staying curious with us, as he's a very knowledgeable space geek. He's got a question for Nick, Marty.
Yeah, Nick, Jim is asking, do you have a favorite launch day experience? With a smile.
Yes, I do, by golly. And John McBride, I hope to God you're up there listening to this. We were covering a launch, a shuttle launch. I can't recall which one it was, but it was John McBride and Sammy Gaymar and myself. The deal was back then we had the big crowd out in the yard at the visitors complex, and we had a stage and a jumbotron. The astronaut would come out and brief and do Q&A and so forth. So, of course, as we were following the launch in the office in between appearances, we came to find out that we were going to go to the T-9 hold, and once we came out of it, we were going to call a scrub because of a technical problem. I think it was GSC or something. So, with all that in mind, we were in the office, and I talked to the guys. I said, "How you want to swing this?" They said, "Well, you go out there and start the ball rolling, and as they come out of the T-9 and call the scrub, we'll come out, Sammy and John, and we'll kind of stroke the audience down, say, we're terribly sorry, but these things happen." I said, "Okay." So we come up, and I get up on stage, and I do the usual opening, and we're coming out of the T-9 hold, and they call the scrub. And I apologize. I said, "Well, terribly sorry, folks, but these are the breaks of the game in the launch business." And I'm looking for Sam and John, and they ain't there, and they ain't coming out. So I'm just kind of improvising, just going along with this sort of thing, just trying to keep the crowd happy. And they never came out. So after I think about 15 minutes up there, I, again, wish the audience well, drive home safely, and all the rest of that stuff. So I go back to the office, and they aren't there. Office is empty. So I get on the phone, and I call McBride's cell phone. And I said, "Where are you?" He said, "We're going." I'm headed home. I said, "Didn't you hear?" He said, "Didn't I hear what?" I said, "They changed their mind. The countdown's back on again." He said, "Bullshit." And that was it. Of course, once they call the ball, they're not going back. So, but that's just kind of a little gotcha that I threw at him. But
Big John McBride, yes, passed away
absolutely,
over a year ago. We is
wonderful
deeply
man,
missed, I'm
wonderful
sure.
man. Yeah.
And his son, Little John, is a big supporter of our
J2,
museum.
J squared. Yep.
You call him J2?
Yep.
All right, J2. He's thank you, J2, for all he does. He's really he enjoyed our shuttle fest.
Yeah.
McBride's son did. He actually told me he felt it helped him with the healing process because he was very close to his dad. They were
Oh yeah.
they were
yeah.
a great team together there.
Yeah.
So great story there, and you'll hear some more from Nick Thomas here as the evening goes on here. Our Stay Curious episode.
As the evening wears on.
As
were you
the
going to
evening
say?
wears on, as I'm winding up here in my Monday. J.D. Bartow is 81 years old today. John
Birthday
David
boy.
Bartow was born in Abington, Pennsylvania, on November 17th, 1944. He was a civilian employee of the Navy when he flew on Space Shuttle Challenger in July 85 for 8 days on STS 51F, a great mission that unfortunately gets branded as the Cola Wars mission, but which he didn't really care to partake in, I understand.
No, that's right.
But JD would have flown more, except for, of course, the Challenger. He's one of the astronauts that was in the queue to maybe do more as a payload specialist. And you certainly know him very well.
Yeah,
What
John
you got to
David.
say about JD?
John David, very importantly, was also a part of the team that helped to design today's International Space Station. He had a lot of input there. And whenever John David is with us, it's a great chance for us to talk about the science of these missions. And of course, that is his bailiwick. Um, and the stories that he tells about the development of the International Space Station, the importance of the science, and so forth. We also get to talk a lot of solar science with John David. That is his specialty. And we are able to talk about some of the things that they've learned about the sun over the years and some of the things they still have to learn about the sun. The temperature discrepancy as you get further away from the sun. Instead of going down, if you take your hand away from a light bulb, the temperature decreases as you move away. But with the sun, that temperature increases. And that's been a big mystery for the solar scientists over the years. And I think what they as John David told me, what they have it narrowed down to is a series of violent electrical storms on the surface of the sun. Now, when we say electrical storm, we're not talking about something blowing over Orlando. We're talking about a storm about twice the size of Texas. So all this activity might be very well at the root of what this temperature discrepancy is. At any event, these are some of the things that we get to talk to John David about when he's on board with us. Of course, as you know, at lunch we had a chance to give him a call and wish him a very happy birthday. He was very happy and returned his thanks. And he's a wonderful, wonderful guy. And
He
we
is.
always
He's
look forward to having him on board.
love being around him. He's a quiet intellect. He's always one of these guys sitting there, and he probably does know everything, but he don't care to show it, unless he needs to. I think, but
Sure.
he's a good, yeah. And that temperature differentiation, 6,000 degrees on the surface, 1,000,000 degrees in the corona around the sun, and we don't know why. And he's tried to figure that out. John David was part of our Shuttle Fest too. And there's Mikey Haddad on the left. That's John's wife. I forget her name.
Donna.
Yeah, they met when she was a worker, level 4 worker with Mikey Haddad there, and Scott Vongen there. Scott Vongen on the right would have gone to space had there been an Astro 3 mission as the astronaut on board there. And JD was maybe going to be on Astro 4 or 5. There was like 6 astronomy telescope missions planned. They only did 2 of them. But there was a nice little love fest up there that you partook of at the launch 5th floor. Now the UCAC launch viewing room up there at our friends at the Hyatt Place. So happy birthday, John David Bartow. Now we're just going to skim through as long as Nick wants to, and you got other compelling questions. We've heard from Cliff Watson. Good morning, everyone. He's out of the hospital.
Oh.
God bless you, Cliff. Cliff makes no bones about it. He's got prostate cancer, and he is undergoing chemotherapy.
Okay.
And though he's been checked, he says, regularly, this is something us men need to keep up on. So God bless you, buddy, down there in Pomona, Australia.
Absolutely.
Well, Nick, you're like me. I was a kid during the '60s, and you were a little bit younger of a kid, but boy, 1965 and 1966, if you didn't get space fever, there was something wrong with you. Because 10 missions were waged while Russia did none that 2-year period, and we learned how to go to the moon. And this last one, we've talked about it with a couple good talks last week. I love the Gemini astronauts that rode the Apollo when they talk about riding this sports car. Several of them have called it. Have you heard them talk about?
Yeah, well, John Young especially talking about the, John said the Gemini was a pilot spacecraft. It was just optimally designed for the job he had to do up there, which was ascent, rendezvous, and entry. And it was a sports car. I think we've talked about the Gusmobile before. But it was everything you needed was well within reach. It was designed for the job that it had to do. And the job that it had to do was quite large to provide a bridge between Mercury and Apollo, of course. But the things accomplished by that spacecraft in just over 2 years, 10 flights, rendezvous, docking, EVA, long duration space flight, all of it, and all of these things laying the groundwork for Project Apollo. Another vehicle built by McDonnell, as was the Mercury spacecraft, Mr. Mack and his team there, and just a dream of a spacecraft. Now, having said that, if you go to the visitors complex and you visit the Gemini 9 spacecraft and look inside, well, there is proverbially not enough room to even swing a cat in that spacecraft. The two astronauts are side by side, they're locked in. The hatch, in many cases, is bumping them in the head. And it was just not, as you were saying, when we were kids, when we were watching these Gemini flights, we were just thinking, oh, God, that would be so cool to spend 2 weeks in that vehicle. Well, you look at it now, it's like, not a
Yeah.
chance in the world would I want to do that. But thank God we had men who were prepared to do that, like Frank Borman and Jim Lovell on 7, celebrating now the anniversary of Gemini 12 with Jim Lovell and Buzz Aldrin. Just a remarkable program that accomplished so much, made so much possible, and of course led us to the Apollo program and to the moon.
And these my heroes growing up for
Mhm.
sure. Knew everything about them that you could find back in the last century. It was always you just couldn't. That was usually the library reading magazines
Yeah.
or not many books out about this stuff. But 10 missions in a
2
little
years.
less than 23 months,
Mm-hmm.
and each one of them was a stepping stone,
Mm-hmm.
a small stepping stone. And quite frankly, about 4 of them, were marginal successes or not.
Yeah.
I mean, or eight when they came back after just a few orbits. They did dock, that was accomplished, but they had Neil had to bring them back early, him
Well, I
and
think,
Scott.
as you say, the importance of the approach that we took in those days, which was to go step by step in a developmental flight test
Mhm.
state of mind, whereas the Soviets were compelled to throw out these space first. Okay, first man in space, first 2 men in space, first woman in space, and they're racking up all this publicity with all these firsts while we're plodding along with these engineering flights, going from one step to another and building that stairway, which eventually led us to the moon.
Yeah, I see. A great way to put it. I see a great question here. Or RG Jubilee, Rosalie, we met her back at the Sands memorabilia show. She said, Jim Lovell said you don't go into your spacecraft, you put it
You
on.
put it on, absolutely. It's
Good one, Rosalie.
Jim Lovell, who also flew on Apollo 8 with Frank Borman, and Frank Borman had a great quote about going to the moon. He said, "We didn't aim at the moon. We aimed at a point in space. We hoped that the moon would be there 3 days later."
Yeah, there you go. It's just like shooting geese. You got to lead the way a little
Mm-hmm,
bit in there. You got a favorite Borman or Aldrin story?
Goodness gracious. Frank Borman, of course, was originally slated during one of the iterations of the first Gemini flight to fly with Gus Grissom. And the story has it from Deke Slayton's book that Gus invited Borman over to the house for dinner. They had dinner, and the next day Borman was informed that he was no longer on the crew. Well, some people said, Gus and Frank were two very strong individuals, and people said that there wasn't enough room in the Gemini spacecraft to hold both egos.
Okay.
Um, Having said that, uh, both of these guys had a good reason for having those egos. And Frank Borman, in particular, who was just such a hard driver and a man who did so much to get the Apollo program back on track after the fire. So these men of the Gemini program, Frank and Jim Lovell, Buzz Aldrin, and such, made so much possible for so many and did so many things when they weren't in the cockpit, were involved in so many things of not only setting policy but helping drive the right engineering decisions for vehicles.
And in the annuals of space history, and have heard, Gus Grissom would have probably been chosen on the first lunar landing.
Mm-hmm.
Deke Slayton says that in his book.
Yep.
His son Scott brags about it all the time when I
Well, you know, during
talk
the
about it.
first press conference of the crew selection, somebody asked the crew, "There's not going to be a lunar module on this flight, but if there were, who would be the two people going down to the surface of the moon?" And Gus said, "Well, if it was this crew, it would be me and one other guy."
Yeah. And Again, and Borman, you just look at Frank Borman, Gemini 8. Now, you all that are so intelligent out there and are stay curious know that if you flew one mission, you're probably in queue to fly 3 missions later. Okay. If you're a pilot, maybe be the commander 3 missions later. And they even did this, through the Apollo era. So Borman going on Gemini 8. Could have been Apollo 8 could have
Frank
been Apollo 11.
Frank was originally scheduled in the original manifest before the fire. Frank's crew was going to fly a high altitude Earth orbital test of the lunar module using the Saturn V rocket. So not too far from where he eventually ended
Right.
up.
But he could have been a commander if he'd stayed in the queue, don't you
Well,
think, and walked on the moon.
well, the thing is, as far as Frank Borman was concerned, he said definitely after he came back from Apollo 8, that was his last flight.
Yes.
You have to understand you're talking about a life where you're running 16-hour days, 6 days a week,
Yeah.
and that sort of an effort is going to take its toll. Frank Borman made his decision that he would prefer to step out of the astronaut role, just as Wally did after Apollo 7.
Yeah.
So
Jim McDivitt.
yeah, Jim
also.
McDivitt. And Jim McDivitt, who became the program manager for the Apollo program, one of the finest program managers we've had in the history of the
Yeah.
Apollo program. So these people eventually end up in the right places.
Yeah. Nick's point, I think, is underestimated the training. 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, just to keep up.
Yeah.
If you didn't work that seventh day, you're probably going to get behind because there's so much coming at you.
Well, like the guys
of
say, it's
everything.
like drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think some of them just said, I'm tired of putting on these space suits and dragging my butt out there. So, all right, go ahead. I know we got some great questions there, Marty. I saw a couple of them there. I know Dave Stangy's been thinking all afternoon of a good one to ask you, Nick. You met Dave at Shuttlefest 3. Let's go before we go to our Apollo 12 guys. Let's get some questions for Nick Thomas.
Okay, we have 3 questions right now. First one's from Dave Stangy. What was the most difficult thing you ever encountered in your job as the astronaut wrangler?
You know, I've been fortunate in looking back that I can't think of any moments or any incidents that were terribly challenging. There were things that had to be overcome, but you never had anything along the lines of, say, disturbance or anything like that. It's all run quite smoothly. I can't look back and say that there were any particular times in these years that I was faced with something that I thought was that I couldn't deal with or overcome. And I'm fortunate in that.
Have you ever?
What about rude people online waiting to get an autograph?
Well,
I won't mention names.
there is a grand formula of diplomacy, and I think it was essayed best by Clint Eastwood, who said in one motion picture, a hard look is better than 1,000 words. You establish a rhythm in those instances, keeping people moving and so forth, and the rhythm pretty much runs itself once you establish it. And I will tell you, 9.9999 times out of 10, it runs smoothly. There are difficulties occasionally, but none that can't be overcome. It's just a matter of keeping the whole thing on track. And my job in those autograph ops is to simply keep the trains on the track, assist the astronaut where I can, and do that to the best of my ability.
Yeah, I think I've seen that look before, Nick.
Yeah.
You might have. I don't think I've given it to you.
No.
No,
Well,
but I
back
think
Well,
I've
that
seen
up.
it.
you might have been in the line of fire now and
Yeah,
again.
he may have been in the. No, it's a. Everyone should spend a year working with the public in
Oh
some
yeah,
job.
yeah.
Okay, I think it would. You
Well,
would
I'll tell
see that,
you,
but you do an awesome job of being a very even-tempered, even with some people that want to test your mettle.
Marty, if you've ever seen the movie Christmas Story, you know,
Sure.
the little kid goes to the department store and the elves are up there with the kids feeding them through the line. I never really understood the mentality of that one elf who just had to, you know, push the kid's face down the slide. I understand where that comes from on some occasions
Yeah,
now.
exactly,
There are a couple
exactly.
of people you want to tap down the slide now and again, but not many.
Well, I'll say this, Nick is very professional. Always, it's a responsibility
Yeah.
when you're dealing with a megalithic company that Delaware North is. You're representing them as well as Kennedy Space Center
Mm-hmm.
there. Delaware North manages it. Is what I'm
Yeah,
saying. Is
yeah.
any complaints would come to them about up to you. But I've seen you. In other words, I know not to talk to Nick about too much off chatter stuff because you're focused
You're
with that next person
yeah,
wants to get that autograph.
you're focused
You
on
get
what's
them up
going on
there.
at the
Yeah.
table.
Yep.
You're listening to that.
Mm-hmm.
You're watching the surrounding crowds who are moving through to make sure that nobody decides to slip in on the backside and so
Yeah.
forth. You're you're tuned to the next person in line who's going to become. You're tuned to what's going on further back in the line in case you've got, say, a student group that wants to come through. So there are a lot of things that you're concentrating on when you're doing that, and it's probably. I think it's probably out of the three things that I do out there with the guys, it's probably the 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 most challenging of the three assignments.
Yeah. And the other two being.
Astronaut encounter, where I provide the introduction and guide the Q&A, and then chat with an astronaut, which is my favorite, which is all pure Q&A, which is all it's all Phil Donahue. It's running around with a microphone saying, "Yeah, what's your question?" So that's a lot of fun, and occasionally being able to share a story or two, and that's a lot of fun too. So you get to participate.
How about and I'm going to say something that 2/3 of them won't even know who it is. How about an Art Linkletter moment where some kid says something that you just don't expect on there? And Art Linkletter was a wonderful entertainer back in the day, and he had
three months ago. 3 months ago, there was an astronaut on board who flew one shuttle mission, and as you've seen, Chat with an Astronaut, we have a screen with their pictures and their mission patches. Well, here's this fellow. We got his pictures and his one patch on the screen. So, boy, I guess he's probably about 12, 13 years old. He puts up his hand. I take the microphone over to him, and he asks the astronaut, "Why did you only fly one mission? Did you quit or were you fired?" And I tell that story to all the other astronauts. They laugh like hell.
Yes, I think I know who that astronaut was too in there, but no, it's no, you do like I said, Nick is always on his game. He may see me standing in line and hi, Mark, good to see you, and then it's like, again, I got to focus on this. No, don't. It's not don't bother me. It's just we all know you're doing it there, and it's so important. I love it. I love it that they do that out there.
Yeah, it really
because
and I'll emphasize, it's the only place in the world that does.
yeah.
And another thing I want to bring to the fore very quickly,
On a daily basis.
unless
Let's put that in there. Yes.
unless people haven't heard about this, TripAdvisor has named the Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex as the #1 tourist destination in the United States and the #3 tourist destination in the world.
Yeah.
So we're up there with the Eiffel Tower. That's pretty good.
And sometimes out there, Nick, I know you think you're in another country because
You hear more languages out there than you do at the UN.
Marty, what else on that UCX family microphone?
Okay, and the questions are piling up, Mark. The next question is from Dean Babcock. Why did McDonnell Douglas choose to design the Gemini spacecraft with the ejection seats instead of a launch escape abort system?
In 2 words, Jim Chamberlain. Jim was the program manager for Project Gemini at the time. And as I've read, Jim Chamberlain hated the idea of an escape tower, which we did have on Project Mercury. And he thought the better idea, rather than have to deal with the engineering of mounting an escape tower on this two-man spacecraft, that the better idea was to provide it with ejection seats. From a pilot standpoint, being thrown back into your own rocket thrust was not a particularly charming idea, any more than being ejected on the ground, because they were zero-level ejection seats. They were supposed to be You were supposed to be able to use them on the ground, and they almost had to on Gemini 6, as you'll remember. But that was primarily the reason. Jim Chamberlain, who also was a big proponent of the Rogallo wing that you might have heard of, the Gemini would come down on a triangular wing and land out on the high desert. But yeah, that was pretty much Jim Chamberlain's idea, to go with ejection seats rather than escape tower.
Okay, next question is from Michael Bruno. Did they still go with pure oxygen in the cabin after the Apollo 1 incident?
No, after Apollo 1, what they did with after Apollo 1 was they went to a mixed gas system while they were on the pad. But during ascent, they bled that off to a pure O2 environment at reduced pressure up on orbit. So they maintained using a single gas on orbit, but used mixed gas on the pad.
A question from Jim McDade. Did you ever talk to Wally Schirra about the Gemini 6A pad aboard? I've heard some fascinating accounts of how Wally reacted in that very intense moment.
Very intense moment. Yeah, we did talk about that, and it was simply in the situation as it was, you had your eyes glued to the control panel, you had your ears perked up to what was coming from the blockhouse, and you had your hand on the ejection handle. But as Wally said, he knew, even though the clock started running, he knew that the vehicle had not moved off the pad, that it was still locked down on the pad. And that's when he decided that he was not going to use the ejection seat. Wally said that many people think of that as being a moment of peak fear, but it wasn't. For him, it was a moment of peak concentration. It's what he was in that cockpit for. It was the job of the test pilot to be so aware of his spacecraft that he knew it by any move, any shudder, any sound, what have you. And that was the professionalism that Wally brought to bear in that situation.
He had the advantage of having a rocket ride to space, so he didn't feel anything his buddy said in Schirra's space. Also, we have the EKG and heart respiratory chart of Schirra and Stafford in the vehicle, and analysts say at the end, at the moment of the abort, it shows that they weren't scared. It was like, darn it, let's go. We got to go.
Sure.
Come on, we're ready to go.
We're here to fly today.
Yeah, let's go. It's like so. And Bob Seek gave us that. Bob was a medical officer on that we have in that room there. So thank you all for your comments. We've got James Gibson is there. He asked. No, I don't think he know any kin to Ed Gibson. That was launched yesterday on Skylab 3/4. Talking about normal ambient pressure, I read that Skylab was launched fully pressurized. That seems fantastic.
It was the cabin with the lab. It was pressurized during launch. Bill Pogue told me that on orbit it was a reduced PSI. He said, and as a result of that, you didn't have as many molecules to carry sound. So normally, if we were talking like this on the Earth, we'd have to talk like this on Skylab, so the sound would carry. So that was an interesting story that Bill Pogue told me on Skylab 3.
We'll talk about Skylab here, but those lucky astronauts, they had all kinds of room in that thing to just do somersaults.
Sometimes too much, because Bill Pogue told me about the time that he got stuck in the middle of the lab. Yeah. And he had to call Jerry Carr, and Jerry came over and launched himself off the bulkhead and hit Bill. And he said it was just like two balls on a pool table. One comes this way and the other one goes that way, and they diverge. So So it could be a little too much space sometimes.
All right, Marty's going to keep track of. Well, here Carlton Bailey's got.
Hey, Carlton.
CB's joined us here. He had some beautiful pictures of the uh, New Glen launch. Did you see the New Glen launch or hear it on the property?
Yeah, I saw it from Titusville.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw it from here too. A little bit of a rumble from our parking lot. Go ahead, Marty. What's CB talking about there?
Have you ever had an astronaut tell you after a show or a signing that something occurred during either that they said was one of the most memorable things that they had ever experienced out there?
Out at the visitors complex.
I'm assuming so, yeah.
Oh, goodness gracious. I think after a public event, whether it's a chat with or autograph op or what have you, we'll definitely, it's a natural pilot thing to do a debrief afterwards. Somebody or someone or a question or what have you always kind of catches your attention. And you get back to the office and say, hey, what do you think about that question or that person and so forth. And so yeah, there's a natural tendency to debrief the event afterwards and to talk about some of the highlights of the questions or the people. Yeah.
Well, I think what CB's fishing at there is anybody ever comment about my shirts that I wear out there?
There are
if you
no
know Carlton, he's been on here.
There are no words to describe those shirts, Carlton.
That's right.
So I'll leave it
Those
at that.
you don't know, imagine a cat flying on a slice of pepperoni pizza with a laser shooting at a dinosaur.
Those must have been some good mushrooms that shirt designer was.
I'll tell you so.
Oh.
Good question, though, CB. We'll talk a little bit more about the astronaut wrangling part of it there as we get through Apollo 12.
Yeah.
Went into lunar orbit 56 years ago. Of course, the lightning strike. Pete Conrad, Al Bean later went on to be commanders of a Skylab mission. Dick Gordon, we've had some talks last week. We had a great talk by Steve Agid. Steve Agid's angle was, and he's one of your communicator friends out there. Steve's angle was, this is one of the most important NASA missions ever, for the reasons of they had to learn how to handle scientific instruments and how they were going to set them up. Were they too bulky to carry?
The introduction of the whole,
a lot of things like that. He said
the introduction of that whole ALSEP package, the Apollo Lunar Science Experiments package, and as you say, the logistics of getting that stuff out of the descent stage and onto the surface and hooked up and prepared and up and running. Not an easy thing, as John Young found out on Apollo 16 when he tripped on the power cable to the heat flow experiment and broke it off. So yeah, very critical in that. Also, the fact on Apollo 12, the idea of having to perform a pinpoint landing near the Surveyor crater. And you can see in this picture here in the center how very close the crew landed to the Surveyor. I remember you mentioned today is the anniversary of the crew going into lunar orbit. Pete Conrad's first words back to Mission Control was, yeah, and just like everybody else who just arrived, we're all three of us plastered to the windows looking.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And again, Apollo 11 was 2.5 miles off of their target. So to do a pinpoint landing, they figured out why. It was mass concentrations under the surface that was an anomaly that speeded up or slowed down that they didn't get.
And just looking forward, that's another thing that we're still going to have to look at for Artemis, because we're entering a different type of orbit, and how are those mass cons going to affect us in that particular?
It's one of my concerns is the polar orbit that we've not done yet, that Artemis 2 is not going to attempt to do.
Right.
As we look back, you're a President Kennedy fan, like me, because of not his politics, but because of how he presented America at the threshold of being the world leaders in all kinds of technology through the moon landing. And I love telling people Mr. President, we didn't do it before the end of the decade once. We doubled down on your pledge and did it in November, you commie people out there. But many people don't. Everyone knows Neil Armstrong's first words on the moon. And why don't you tell people what Pete's first words on the moon were?
Boy, that may have been a small one for Neil, but it was a long one for me.
That's right. In there, a guy with a great sense of humor. You can't tell on our live broadcast in public some of the stories you know about Pete.
If you can't be good, be colorful.
Yeah, if you can't be good, be colorful, and he certainly was. Actually, Hazel Seacack Banks, one of the secretaries there, they actually thought Pete Conrad would probably get the first straw. To
Yeah,
land
it
on the
was
moon.
it was quite possible that 12 was going to be the first landing, and it was actually, as much as anything, it was by a fleeting chance of crew assignments that Pete did not end up on what would have been the first lunar landing. But
As we look back 50 years, 56 years at the complexities of the lunar chart that many of you know, 125 things have to go right in this unbroken chain. Gunter Vent's wonderful title to his book, The Unbroken Chain. Any of those links would delay or stop the moon landing there. And as I look back, like you, Nick, I thought 50 years later we would have like Antarctica bases on the moon with 20 or 30 people leaving there, swapping them out 4 or 5 at a time, every other month. It didn't become that way because of basically probably politics. But as we look back on these pictures of what we accomplished and what we learned, what does it mean to you in the eyes of the public out there?
what a priceless history, and what a privilege for me and for yourself and for Marty to have lived in that time. To be able to walk out at night and look up at the moon and realize that there are 2 Americans walking on the surface of of the moon. That's an incredible privilege, and it's something that I deeply hope the young people of today are able to realize with the Artemis program. I'm hoping that the flight of Artemis 2, as they fly the circumlunar flight, swing around the moon, come back home, I'm hoping that those pictures that come back from that mission in real time will inspire the young people to see that, there's something I can get involved here that's bigger than just myself. And I think that is what I experienced in Apollo, and it's what I hope the young people experience with Artemis.
Absolutely. Something that our country can be drawn towards would be great. The
Mm-hmm.
whole world was drawn towards Apollo 11, Apollo 12. Had its moments. I think the TV camera messing up really created an apathy after Apollo 13, and then 14. Finally, we're back. But we went back with a vigor and with a purpose and with skilled scientific instrumentation.
Yeah.
And yet, the best thing that didn't come out of all this was cordless tools, for example, that everybody uses. That did come out of this.
Yeah,
I think it was humanity, like Bill Anders said. We went to the moon and we discovered ourselves.
There is the practical, like the cordless drill, and there's the esoteric. What happens to the human spirit as a result of an accomplishment like this, and what happens to the human soul as to what our possibilities are. And again, I'm hoping that is what comes of the Artemis program as well.
Well, we never let anyone forget the Apollo program here at the American Space Museum. Of course, we have our naysayers and deal with hoaxers and so forth. Nick, I don't think I shared this with you. Our friend Jay Honeycutt was asked at the documentary film festival that we did in Melbourne. Somebody asked, "What do you say to people that say we didn't go to the moon, Mr. Honeycutt?" And he said something I never heard before. He said, "Well, for years I've said we were barely smart enough to go to the moon. So how in the hell you think we're smart enough to fake it?"
Yeah. Well, somebody joked that the director of Stanley Kubrick, the joke, and this is a joke, that's just a story, this is not truth, but the joke was that Stanley Kubrick was approached to help the government fake the moon landing. And Kubrick undertook a study, and he went back to the government. And he said, you know, it's going to be cheaper to go to the moon than it is to fake it. So
There you
there
go.
you have it.
There you have
And
it.
I think the best answer to that question, what would he say to people who think we faked the moon landing, came from Sam Gamar. When someone asked him that exactly,
Astronaut
what
Sam.
what do you say to these people? And Sam just chuckled and he said, "Idiot." So,
Yeah.
and I can't top that.
Yeah, can't say that in my job. Sometimes I say, I'm sorry you didn't get a very good education, because I don't understand electricity. So
Well, they
I'm going
say
to say when I flip
the
on a
the
switch, it's magic, and
well,
I'm
you
going
know,
to leave it
the
at that.
best, one of the most diplomatic answers to that is, well, you know, that's a very interesting point of view,
There you
and
go.
leave it at that.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Now go get your shock treatments and
It does. One little space history thing going on because we have a space historian with us, and to me, this is one of the another very important chapter. It's hard to put them above any others, but the Skylab missions, not revered and talked about like the moon landings, yet they pushed the envelope. Every mission for man's durance. Again, communist Russia thought they were with their Salyut space station first, and then Succession, and these just blew it out of the water. Their Salyut in volume and stuff. But here we have Jerry Carr, Ed Gibson, and Bill Pogue, and we've lost Jerry and Bill, and Ed's 85, 86 years old, I think. And wrote a couple cool books. One's called Reach, and the other is Reach is the one, and the others. Anyway, they read their sci-fi
when
things.
when we talk about books, let's talk about Bill Pogue's book called "By the Grace of God,"
Okay.
and it's his experience as a pilot, as a pilot with test pilot with the Thunderbirds, and then of course his NASA experience, and all the times in his life that basically the grace of God reached forward and brought his life forward in the way of accomplishments and goals. Um, he was a remarkably soft-spoken man. You talk about someone who flew with the Thunderbirds, and you're going to think about, the biggest swinging what on the campus.
Yeah.
But he carried himself with deep humility, with deep, honest humility, and he was one of the most inspiring people you would ever want to speak to. Soft-spoken, accurate, and I hate to use the phrase "down to earth," but we'll use that. But and a very warm and very gracious man. So I think of Bill whenever I think of Skylab. I think of all the guys. Jerry Carr, just had the greatest sense of humor of so many of the folks that I've met out there. He had a very dry sense of humor. On Apollo 12, when the guys finally got into Earth orbit after that lightning strike, Pete called the ground and said, "Hello, Houston, Apollo 12," and he came back and he said, "Hello, Stormy, how you doing up there?"
Stormy.
So he had that very dry sense of humor, Jerry did. And Ed Gibson, a remarkably philosophical, well-spoken man who could take that whole space flight experience and blend it into the philosophical, into the human experience, into what it meant for his soul and for his heart. Three remarkable men, a great mission, which, as you say, didn't have the flash and flare of the lunar missions, but was a program of great accomplishment as it was. Now, a lot of people think about Skylab as being long endurance flight, which they were for that time. But to my mind, the greatest accomplishment of the Skylab program was a package called EREP, the Earth's Resources Experiments Package. And that was where we took the time to look back at the Earth and to look at farmlands and resources and things of that nature, and to put that focus on the Earth, which I think Skylab did quite effectively and quite notably.
I see. Yeah, excellent talk there. I see some other comments there. Tom Celentano says another joke about Kubrick. was he was such a perfectionist. He insisted on filming a fake moon landing on location.
Yeah.
And,
Just keeping it real.
privileged to meet Jerry Carr. That was one of his last swan songs, I think, when you had him out there maybe 3, 4
Yeah,
years ago before
yeah.
he died.
Mhm.
We also featured at Shuttlefest 4 the documentary, The Artist and the Astronaut, with his wife up in his second wife up in the New England area there. And that was shown at our Shuttle Fest. Some good reviews there. They brought in some of the principals on that. They being Mitch Rothman. Hey, Mitch, again, watching that there. Uh, and Ed Gibson, no good friends of our godfather, Charlie Mars. We've never really hooked up with him, or I haven't seen an opportunity to meet him on the Space Coast since I've been around. But I'd love to. He's a solar physicist. He and J.D. Bartow be talking about solar plasma and the solar cycle.
Ed has a first to his name in that he was the first person to capture a mass CME, a coronal mass ejection coming off the sun in real time.
Yeah.
He was at the solar telescope platform and just happened to be doing a test of it and had it warmed up and ready to go when this thing happened. So he was the first to catch
Yeah.
one in real
Very
time.
famous picture. In fact,
Yeah.
he took a 1 year break after this mission to write the solar physics this book about what's going on there. I'd love to meet him because I really enjoyed his books. He's very supposedly he's written a third book. We'll talk about him one day when we talk about books. We'll have you back on that. But he's an awesome, can paint a hell of a picture with words of what it's like to be in space. And as we put up here, the all three missions. Let me get out of here. Skylab 1 was, of course, 28 days, then 56 days, and then pushed it to 84 days. And of course, one of my favorite guys who I have met is Jack Lausma.
Right.
And we are actually, as long as Jack is in good health to travel at age 90, his daughter Mary says, we will have him at Shuttlefest 5
Okay, very good.
to talk about his experience in Russia. He was one of the Russian astronauts.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever hear him talk about driving the train? That the conductor of
Yes.
the train between
Yes.
Moscow and
Yep.
Star City let
Yep.
him stop and stuff
Yep.
like that. We've got that on record here. What the other three, the other of the 9 gentlemen there? What could you say? Actually, there's one alive from each mission there. Okay, Kerwin's alive at like age 89. Kerwin at the Astronaut Hall of Fame was complaining that he didn't get credit for an inter EVA.
Oh, okay.
All right, when they opened up the hatch, actually to try to, with a fishing pole, pull on that solar panel to let loose, everyone was exposed to it. He was kind of teasing about that because Jared Isaacman had just done his spacewalk.
Well, one of the
others.
remarkable things about that flight, of course, was the rescue of the Skylab laboratory.
Mm-hmm.
And when Pete Conrad was asked about the highlight of his astronaut career, he said it was not going to the moon. It was the Skylab mission that allowed them to pull off this incredible rescue. And that was what he was, as an astronaut, most proud of as far as his flights were concerned.
Marty's got a question from someone about the Skylab missions.
Dean Babcock is asking, could you elaborate on the mutiny that supposedly occurred on Skylab 3 mission?
Okay, I had a chance to talk to Bill Pogue about this at length. And the fact of the matter was that the Skylab 3 crew followed Skylab 2. Skylab 2 was commanded by Al Bean. Al Bean was, to say the least, a go-getter. If there were 24 hours in a day, Al would squeeze 25 out of it. He was just a go-go kind of a guy. And in fact, on that mission, they were able to accomplish even more than were required of them. And so when 3 went up there, Mission Control simply took for granted that they were going to follow the same pace as the Skylab 2 crew. Not an easy thing to do. And they were basically throwing instructions and experiments at these guys one after the next. And it was, again, like drinking from a fire hose. And the more they were throwing up there, the more complex it got. And when you rush, of course, the more you rush, the more you're going to be susceptible to making mistakes. And the crew had I think, the courage to step up and say, nope, we're not going to accept that new particular experiment. We're going to stay on our pace and on our tempo. And it was simply a fact that the ground did not understand what it was like to do these things up on orbit. Something that takes perhaps 45 minutes to rehearse on the ground might take over 2.5 hours to accomplish when you're up in orbit, merely because of the complexity that zero G throws into the whole situation. Gathering your equipment, putting it together, running the experiment, and then breaking it down again. So they were basically driving these guys to damn hard. And that was where it's referred to as a mutiny, and I won't debate that one way or the other. But the crew took an important step in reminding the ground that doing these things up on orbit is not the piece of cake that they seem to think of down there.
Good explanation there. And there's been other things written about that. So we're going to any final thing about Skylab and your thoughts there as we've looked at the Gemini, the Apollo program, and the Skylab, the last mission going on right now.
Well, again, you look at the patch for Skylab 3 and you see the three major goals of the Skylab program. And that was to study the Earth, to study the sun, and to study the human body.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the program overall accomplished those goals quite well and brought us to the point where we are today, where, again, step by step, we're taking those accomplishments from the past. We're constantly standing on the shoulders of giants.
Irony is that big windmill on the part is is for the solar telescope energy power source for it, and it was the solar activity at a peak that brought it down early, because as we are like in a peak now, solar activity, that's an 11-year cycle from low to low or high to high. Hotter sun means hotter everything expands. Our atmosphere expanded and brought the Skylab down. And my gosh, if we could have just kept it up there a little bit longer.
Well, I've talked to people about that, and we've discussed opinions on that. And of course, Jack Glausma was scheduled to be on a flight that was going to reboot Skylab using the space shuttle. But in point of fact, to my mind, if we had done that, we simply would have been stuck with a white elephant, because our technology had so far surpassed everything that we had on Skylab. Skylab was already obsolete by the time we would have gone up and rescued it. So all things in their own time. Where we went after Skylab, I think worked quite well.
Good. Yes, that's one of the weird things about space is once something's in production for 4 or 5 years, it's got parts that are obsolete.
You're constantly trying to top your own act, as it were.
Exactly, yeah. Well, let's talk about the future and your questions about the future. There's Mark Usiak's launch of Artemis 1. And many people here on the coast don't realize that the building going up beside the VAB is the pad for Artemis 2 being constructed there beside the VAB. Hey, CB, you got your tickets punched with Fodsy and Snowball and Gypsy and Sir Drool's Cranky Panks, his animals he keeps up there. Have you got your ticket punched? Have you
Not yet
done that? I haven't done that yet either. I got time, but they're putting your picture, your name on a microfilm, not microfilm, gosh, old school, yeah, microfiche. They're putting it on a thumb drive or something, like you're gonna.
Still using the card catalog, are you?
I miss a card catalog. That was some good old days in the library there. I kind of miss that, but yeah. So there we have our astronauts, left to right. Tell us who they are. I know you.
Well, our commander, looking at the screen to the left, our commander, Reed Wiseman. And next is our pilot, Victor Glover. Behind Victor is Christina Cook. And then following up there is Jeremy Hansen from Canada. With in the background there, a beautiful picture of Artemis 1 having swung around the moon, or might be approaching the moon. I'm not sure what we are in this part of the timeline. But of course, Artemis 1, like Artemis 2, going 5,000 miles beyond the moon to look back at both the moon and the Earth.
Mhm.
Beautiful picture. And as I say, I'm looking forward to seeing that picture again, only this time taken by a human hand on the shutter.
There you go.
Yeah.
Reed Wiseman, shuttle commander.
Hmm.
Of course,
And
Victor.
also station veteran, space
Yeah,
station
there he was,
veteran.
station veteran. And Victor Glover, a pilot of the first official.
Two Navy test pilots.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And Christina Cook has the
Mhm.
record for woman's duration
EVA.
time at 350 days, something like that, on a space station. And then rookie,
Jeremy Hansen,
the Canadian.
but an accomplished test pilot in his own right.
Absolutely. Uh, and the women of Artemis. We were
Mhm.
talking earlier over lunch. Who do we think? I understand Jessica Meir has been chosen for an expedition flight. I hadn't
that's
heard
great.
that. She was my selection to be the first woman on the moon. Yours is?
Well, you know what? I've spoken about this in one-on-one with people. I actually don't choose to say it out loud because I don't want to put a jinx on it. But I have my candidate for the first woman on the moon. I've been pleased to meet her, and I'm looking forward to her being the first, not only to be the first woman on the moon, but to command that mission because she's entitled to do that by way of her experience as a fighter pilot, test pilot, um, and also a space station veteran and EVA veteran. So she's out there. I hope she knows who she is. And good luck to you.
Yeah. And though whoever's the best suited to go to the moon
Yeah.
is what I say. If it's two women, so be it. It doesn't really matter to me. But a person of color would be nice. And Jessica Watkins is who I will verbally say I think will be the first woman on the moon. She's a geologist in training and was a commander on a SpaceX Crew Dragon flight there. Stephanie Wilson has been waiting 14 years to go back to space. She was supposed to be on Crew Dragon 10, I believe, and that was swapped out with the fiasco with the Starliner and
Right.
Butch and Sonny being up there. But Jasmine Mogelli, Marine, Nicole Mann, Ura, that would be after all. If she went, that would be appropriate. Her name's Mann, and Marty says that the men's division of the Navy is the Marines. So,
Well,
uh,
the Nicole's call sign is Duke.
oh, yes, right, it is
After
Duke.
Duke
Yeah,
Wayne.
yeah, she's quite. She's quite. So Kayla Barron's been up there. Ann McLean just came back.
Mhm.
And Kate Rubens is the
Yeah.
one we've got covered
Yeah.
up there. Kate Rubens.
Kate's way there.
Like she's one of the
First
first people to eat some
per-
lettuce on space.
More importantly, Kate was the first person to sequence DNA in space.
Oh, did she
Yeah.
do that?
Mhm.
Okay. I think she also voted from space twice for some odd reason in there. But the Artemis 2 profile is very interesting. It's not doing anything that Artemis 3 is doing, meaning it's going to just do a free trajectory almost.
Pre-return trajectory.
From about 6,000 miles behind the backside of the moon.
And it's interesting because your TL, your translunar injection burn from Earth orbit, is also your deorbit burn because we're going into free return trajectory.
Oh, sure. Yes.
So you're doing all that at once in a way. So
yes.
that's going to be exciting.
Especially,
What's especially going to be exciting are going to be the rendezvous and proximity operations that the guys do while they are in Earth orbit when they detach from the interim cryogenic propulsion system, the ICPS second stage. And then they will basically manually fly that vehicle in proximity to the ICPS, testing the controls of that spacecraft, doing the job of operational test pilots, and that's something that I look forward to. Now I believe Victor as a pilot is going to be prime on that exercise, but I've also read somewhere that all 4 crew members are going to have their chance on the controls in doing that, and I hope that's the case.
Yeah, actually, an Earth orbit is a real workout for the
Oh,
Orion
yeah,
spacecraft
absolutely. You've
and
got to.
its maneuverability, and then the coast to the moon and looping around it is just going to be testing the endurance, the solar panel energy, things
Comms,
like
deep
that.
space
Yeah,
network. Yeah.
deep space network on there. Let's see, I got another pretty picture here. Very meaningful picture
Yeah,
for me.
yeah.
I love that picture.
Yeah, it's always puts goosebumps in the right places to see the crew with the either spacecraft procedures train or what have you, but the actual spacecraft here over at the ONC building. Uh, it's the crew with their flight hardware, and we grew up with that in Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo, where the crew basically babysat their spacecraft from factory floor to boost vehicle. So this is always a good picture to look at and to think about uh, what that crew has ahead of them.
Beautiful comments here. I know you're enjoying it. Like Steve Jokum says, hit that like button, share, tell people to join our Facebook page. We have 4,000 followers. We couldn't do our program on there until we had 1,000 followers and move it from Facebook to here. We're glad that so many of you are enjoying this conversation with Nick. Hopefully he can come back next month, maybe not, depending on some personal things I know you got going on. But as you see, we just love an impromptu show like this, where we're listening to a real space historian who's talked to the people who've made space, and I know you're working on at your word processor or whatever with putting some of these thoughts down. We all hope so. On there, let's see. I was thinking about going out here with this. Okay, go ahead, Marty, with your question.
Yeah, Dean Babcock is asking, could the mission plan still be changed for polar orbit?
Or a polar orbit,
Polar orbit.
I very much doubt that. I mean, they're still in the trenches putting together procedures for a future mission which would require the polar orbit. I think right now we're concentrating on the idea of let's test this spacecraft and do it as properly and as efficiently as possible. Attempting to shoehorn a polar orbit into this flight is simply putting too many moving parts in too soon. So I think we're going to save that for later flights. Our primary objective now is to test this spacecraft and bring it home safely.
So I will give Nick a question here about to end our program here, or at least bring it to a wonderful close. Is what timelines are you hearing? Where is Orion right now? What timeline are you hearing for the rollout?
Mm-hmm.
We know that the window opens up February 5th.
Mm-hmm.
Hotels are already booked
Good.
for that weekend,
Good.
sold out.
Glad to hear it.
So what's your ear to the ground out there saying, Nick, with what's going on with our timeline for Artemis 2?
As you will be aware, the official timeline for Artemis 2 launch is April of next year. However, if everything works properly and we stay on schedule, we would like to go as early as 5 February. Now, the unknown part of all this is what effect the government shutdown is going to have on us, because even though the shutdown has ended, the effects are still rippling outward like a pebble thrown into a pond. And we're going to have to find out what effect the shutdown has had on everything from supply chains to work being done on hardware to be delivered, things of that nature. So that's still an unknown that's rolling down the road. As far as a nominal timeline is concerned, we'd like to see a rollout to the pad in January. The vehicle is fully stacked right now over in High Bay 3.
Okay.
One of the events coming up that I'm looking forward to is going to be a modified countdown demonstration test in the vehicle assembly building, and that will include the participation of the flight crew, fully suited and in the spacecraft.
Has that ever been done before?
Never been done.
Training?
Not been done inside the vehicle assembly building, but we have the wherewithal to accomplish it. And the more we can do as far as assessing the reliability of this vehicle, I'm all for it. Now we will have a full-blown countdown demonstration tests out at the launch pad. We'll do that as we always have with shuttle and so forth. But this preliminary, I'll call it, countdown demonstration test is going to be it's going to be a first. As I say, we'd like to see a rollout to the pad in January, aiming toward a launch in February. But again, there are imponderables out there as a result of this government shutdown that we still haven't felt the ripples from.
Artemis 1 was launched, I believe, November 19th,
Yeah,
3 years ago.
22,
3
right?
years ago.
22, right?
All right. And so we're hoping they can get the cadence going here. This is a super important mission, of course, in all elements of the SLS rockets already been tested. There were some anomalies with the heat shield and some things like that that everyone's got confidence in now. So
Yeah, I've come to learn that the way they're assessing the heat shield situation now is that we are going with the same heat shield that we had on Artemis 1, but instead of attempting the skip reentry, we're going to go in with a ballistic reentry, same as we did during the Apollo program. That's probably, my guess is probably going to exert anywhere from 10 to 12 Gs on the crew coming back home, but it's something that we experienced during the Apollo program, so it's something that we've already learned from. But a newly designed heat shield would probably not be seen until at least Artemis 3.
and there are upgrades I've read of throughout the Artemis program of the vehicles itself. So
Sure.
but they do have Artemis 4 and 5. I think Artemis 4 Orion is pretty much
in
finished,
the ONC
right?
building right now, right?
And on there. So great. Marty, we got any other questions over there? I'll have Nick read our viewers here, make you put on your glasses so they
Do
can
this to me every
hear
time.
hear their name in your voice there.
Okay, let's say hello to Dave Stange, Carlton Bailey, Stevie Oakums, Tom Usiak, Mitch Rothman, Dean Babcock, Tom Celentano, Larry Pushkar, Jim McDade,
Yeah.
R.G. Jubilee, is that?
Yeah. Mostly parked is what
Most
that,
okay.
Yeah.
Doug Forrest, Freeway of Others, Mark Dell, Cliff Watson, Rotten Piranha. Okay, Rotten Piranha. There's a handle for you. The One Click Slapper, Michael Bruno, John Doe, James Gibson, and Falcon Heavy Driver. So we want to thank you all for being on board with us. Tell your friends, hit that like and subscribe button, and stick with us because the future is just getting more exciting as each day goes by, and culminating. And I look forward to culminating in February with the launch of Artemis 2.
Well, good. Well, thank you, Nick. We can't wait to have you
Thank you
back
very much.
again.
Appreciate
Always a wonderful program, and we enjoy and appreciate all that you do
Thank
at
you.
the Kennedy Space Center, and anywhere you share news about our wonderful museum. I know in there. So, looks all good from here, Marty. We've got. I'm lining up some guests later this week. I've got some lined up for Thanksgiving week. We will be off. The holidays are on Thursdays this season. Thursday Thanksgiving, Thursday Christmas, Thursday New Year's Day, and we'll be taking off those days. But the museum will be open to Fridays and Saturdays. We're a tourist destination, and so be it. We will be open for that on there. So if you're planning a vacation here at our Space Coast, we hope that you put Kennedy Space Center on your list. Like Nick said, the entire country, this was the #1 tourist attraction. And boy, there's days you felt like it last year, wasn't there?
Yes, there were.
How's business been out there?
It's been this. We're in the quiet time right now, but as I tell everybody, enjoy it and appreciate it because Christmas peak comes and you're gonna look back at these days with great fondness. But
they really dress it up there. They've
yeah.
got a beautiful row of Christmas trees that are all themed with each program and stuff like that. They have a special event for the ticket holders. I haven't
Something
seen
new
the date
every
of that.
something new every Christmas
Yeah.
season.
Were you out there? How about the rain that fell out there? I went out there one day and I couldn't get through the parking lot
Yeah,
because I didn't want to go left to the
Um,
parking lot like I
very-
usually did
yeah.
because I wondered how deep that water
I've
was.
been
But
lucky in that, driving through the employees section, you don't have to deal with that lake out there.
yeah,
But the astronauts have had to because they're parking over in lot 1 now. So it's been a bit of a challenge, but these are lessons learned. We got a lesson here on drainage that we've got to deal with.
yeah.
But it is Florida. It's tropical weather. It comes with the territory. It comes with the paradise. So you roll with it, you overcome it, and you move on to the next challenge.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago we had a deluge that was worse than any hurricane I've experienced in my 8 years
man.
here, and it really caught people by surprise. 14. When I saw a prediction of 10 to 14 inches
Yeah.
of rain, I'm going, "What? That's a
Yeah,
misprint," you know.
yeah.
But fingers crossed, we've gotten through this hurricane season without even a dust up. So that ends officially December 1st. So not much activity going on. Oh, the hot air is here at the American Space Museum in our studio here at the Americans, where we appreciate you all watching today. A wonderful program with the one and only Nick Thomas. So can't wait for you to come back again. Thank you for a great job, Marty. You ready to say something on that USAC family phone there?
We really had 18 inches of rain in Titusville. 18 inches.
18 inches was in Titusville.
Yeah, and one
Wow.
more thing, we had a couple of requests that Nick come back and do a movie review.
Yes, we enjoy. We did.
Oh,
We
yeah,
did
the
movies
space movies.
before. Yeah.
Space
Nick
movies, yeah,
and I've
sure.
talked about space books, and we'll make it so.
Yeah, we can do
Okay.
that.
We love talking about it on there. I've never asked you. Are you Star Trek or Star Wars?
Star Trek, the original series.
Okay.
That's my end all and be all right there.
I actually saw one the other day I'd never seen before. That was a treat.
Of the original series?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, of the original series on there.
Now, if you want to,
it was Spock and Scotty were in the little runner thing on a planet and crashed on a planet.
on the Galileo 7.
Yeah, Galileo 7.
That was a
that was a
wonderful
really
episode.
good one.
Kudos to the late Don Marshall, who was such an integral part of that episode, and how he
Really?
got up in Spock's face. And in one of the histories in the historical arc of Star Trek, they said that after that mission, although you didn't see it in the episode, that after that mission, Scotty recommended the court-martial of Lieutenant Bomer because of insubordination.
Oh, really?
Yep. Mhm.
That's interesting. It was a heavy episode.
Very,
I'm so glad to
oh
see
yeah,
it.
excellent.
Spock was
very good.
his first command of
Yeah.
this little the scout ship there, the Galileo, and another commander above Kurt was. You have 24 hours to find him, or we got.
Yeah. And those,
As you can see, I don't want to get rid of this guy once we start talking here. So then we had lunch together. How
Yeah.
about dinner?
we still haven't run out.
Yeah. All right, folks. Thank you so much for watching. It means a lot to our nonprofit that we have got such quality people like yourselves watching
Yeah,
the show,
thank you.
loving space history, and wanting more every day. So we'll give you more tomorrow. Until tomorrow, I'm Mark Marquette on behalf of Nick Thomas and Marty Winkle, thanking you for making this a wonderful program and saying, I can't wait to see you in our museum to bridge the space between us.